Hi, this is Tom Mitchell, creator of Dreamland Models Incorporated. Thank you for purchasing my products. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is fire up Poser. I prefer Poser 2012 only because I build products for a living. I find it to be a more stable version. Just a matter of personal preference. We'll load 81 city blocks, runtime, and go ahead and throw one into the viewport. A little easier to see it if we put it in a camera view. There's quite a few different cameras for this set. We have random views here. We'll expand that a little bit. That show you many different random points. But we can start off with the pose the blocks camera, which takes you way up in the air, and the same configuration as you would see on the map.
So you can get an idea how it is that we're going to load all these city blocks. We'll hide all the blocks themselves by virtue of our hide show poses, which are in here. I'm used to using 3 monitors, so it's difficult for me. But we can hide them all at once, or we can go into the hierarchy editor, which is found up here, and just hide the whole city block and show the property back there if we want. And if we like, when they have that sky dome in the background, we can turn that on. But as you can see, this is a little less distracting to work with. So we'll go back to, scale this down a little bit. And if you own all of those low poly blocks, which I already have preloaded in this runtime, you can see that each one of these low poly blocks has a full set, which has almost all of them have trees that are all controlled by the body. Or there's one with no extras. That means it just loads real quick. See how fast I came into scene. I think this is like a little bit over 2,000 polygons for that whole city block, which is pretty amazing because they look pretty good even up close. So if you want 81 city blocks in this scene, and there's 9 different low poly blocks here, as you can see all the way through 9, that would mean we'd put 9 of 1, 9 of 2, so 9 each will give us 81 blocks, but we want them all in military rows. We can kind of spot them around. But I'll start off with by loading 9 of them. And there's the extra one. So that's 1 extra, 2 extra, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more. Now we're going to go back into our pose folder, and we'll change the locations and show a few more here. And we'll take that first one, highlight the body because these are all figures now, and double click that pose. It puts it, boom, right there in the corner. And I'm going to move this hierarchy out of the way, but I'm going to show you first how you can do that. As I do these poses, I collapse it. That tells me which one I've already moved. Now I'm looking at my sheet that you have already printed out, most likely. Looks like this. And I just put one right there. So let's say we'll put the next one at 17. And I'll show you this back and forth a couple of times. So scroll down here till we hit 17. And we have the second one highlighted. And there it goes right there, you can see it. We add this over out of the way a little bit. And then we go down to hierarchy, we'll collapse that, go to the next one, select the body, and we'll go back to that sheet. Say we just put one on 17, let's try one at 22. See how that looks. So that's selected, go down here to 22, double click it, it gives us the third one there. I think I like 21 a little bit better, maybe it's a little more randomized. And then I think we'll go right around here, which on the sheet be about 75 or 76 for the last one, which is here. So we'll try 76 and see how that looks. That's not too bad. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different low poly blocks here in the scene. I'm going to go ahead and load the rest of the blocks in this scene and use the low poly, no extras versions. Some of these renders that I've done, I was using the perimeter, I'm using the full set, so there's some trees in the foreground, but I only went in a couple deep. Same thing what you can see here. So I'm probably going to backtrack and swap this out to a full one so these can be used for renders. But I'll get back to you once I get this scene built. Be back in a little bit.
Okay, I finished loading 81 city blocks. Took me about an hour because I fiddled around. I took these on the outer edges here because I'm going to use these for renders for the product. Are all full blocks. These 2 rows here, and then also the second row in. So when I'm doing these renders from the west side facing east, each one of these streets is going to look completely random. One thing worth mentioning, if you right click in your viewport, at the very bottom you see OpenGL or SRI-D, however you say that, SRI-D. This is a more simplified version. I set this up so you can see the difference. It's already loaded with this at OpenGL, so if I go to full render, you get a better view of what this looks like, but this can take a sizable amount of time for have all those textures load into the RAM in your computer. Okay, I paused the recording there for a little bit because it took a while for Poser to catch up. And as you can see, we have the sky dome missing. Let's bring that hierarchy editor back in. And also set my viewport to SRI-D or SRI-D, and you'll be able to see things speed up quite a bit. Now, as you can see, I got quite a few objects here in the scene. There's all 81 blocks in that hierarchy editor. But the sky dome on the 81 city blocks is missing. So we'll let that show again, as well as the forest, because otherwise you can't see the trees. So there we go. Now everything's showing in the scene, but it looks a little dark, right? Well, we haven't added a light yet. So we go in here in 81 city blocks. One of these lights was behind the camera. It's up and behind a little bit, and this one here is directly mounted to the camera. Now you can't see it in the hierarchy editor because it's a parented light. Means when it loads into the scene, it's parented to one of the cameras. So you have to show cameras and then show lights, and then you can see there it is, parented to that main camera. Now the beauty of this parented light is whatever camera you have active at the time, you load this light, it's piggybacking right on the back of your camera. So it gives you light coming directly from like over your shoulder, so to speak, or top of your head, if you want to think of it that way. Now that's that on the main camera light, the little darker one here. Now the behind the camera one is up and behind. Now this is the nice thing about parenting in Poser that I like. I have these dials set to show us west, east, north, south, and you can picture those as being in conjunction with your camera. So if I have this, the one that's directly on the camera, if I move it a little bit north, you should be able to see it show up in the viewport there. See it? I have it scaled up so it's easy to see in the scene. Doesn't affect the power of the light, and it just makes it easier to spot it. So as you're noticing, that light is moving directly in alignment with the camera. If I go up here and touch the camera controls and I rotate the camera a little bit, now if we bring that camera up, you get this hierarchy out of the way. If we bring that camera up in the air or bring the scene down, you can see there you are, 81 city blocks, pretty randomized. There's that light again. So now, if you go back to those lights, you can go west and east. Think of those going perfectly perpendicular to the movement of the camera. So west and east is left and right, no matter which way you're facing the camera. Down and up, obviously, same thing. And then north and south. North is away from you, like you're going north, and then south is behind you. So you can see the effects of light a little bit there in the scene. Now, if we go back into one of those cameras I was talking about, north facing south, we hit camera B. There we are. Now we just move over one. There's a whole nother set of blocks. Each one of these outer blocks that I have located here, north facing south, have plants on them. Depending on which camera you're in, you may not see them at the moment. But each one of these blocks has plants. Now see there, if I select that block, its controls show up. I can turn the block, and there you see there's the trees we're trying to control. If you particularly want those on the corner, just turn it 90 degrees and set it where you like. But I'm going to go back to 0, and then so you can see the controls aligned to camera. If you see those trees in the viewport, they're turning it all at the same time and aligning to the camera. Now if there were trees on this particular block here, maybe if we turn it 90 degrees we'll see some. No. And there we go. So we'll set this scene up for 260 or 270. And there we go, it snaps right in position. You see that these controls are limited. This turn control will work no matter where this block is posed. These controls down here, local limits, are that same 9-block limit that I build into all these city blocks when they're in that 9-square block situation. A couple notes I had written down here I wanted to make sure I had mentioned. It's a good idea if you print out more than one of these sheets on just cheap paper when you're laying out that entire 81 city blocks. Just make a note of what number you have on each square. Make it easier to keep track of what you've already put where. Also like to talk about the Sky Dome itself on the 81 city blocks product. There you can see the controls here. They're quite handy. You can move the dome up and down to adjust for the image that's applied. You can move the dome back and forth about 1,500 feet each way. You can also hide it with this one dial, which is basically just a scale button. You can also tilt it 15 degrees either direction if you want to really go for some dynamic looks. But basically the most important are the up and down controls, the turn controls, which rotates the image or rotates the dome so you get the image in the location you want, and then also for the scale height, so you can stretch that up and make it not look quite so scrunched. Depends on the image that you have. Also there's a scale and move, which does both things at one time. Better used if you haven't touched the height control or the down up control. That's just a master parameter that does both of them in one move. Also included with this set is a prop mover. We'll just go ahead and load this in the scene. See it show up there in the wireframe. It has a crosshatch in it just so you can see it easier. So it's the same controls as you do on any one of my city blocks. Being as it's a figure, it's capable of moving by virtue of poses. Now it's intended to be used in conjunction with a prop. So let's go ahead and load a prop into the scene. We'll just throw this water tower set in there. Now because it's a prop, you can't pose it. Now that's the whole point of this block or a prop mover. So we just drag it in here where it says drag prop here, and that's where you would parent it, and just select the body. Then you can go back into the poses folder, in 81 city blocks, and there you go. There's the whole point. Another minor note about Poser. Notice this area here that should be showing up as grass is showing up as concrete. That's because this material is not just a straightforward image map. It has blenders and coming out of the places you would expect an image to show up. So Poser just keeps it simple. Doesn't matter if it's in 3D or in OpenGL, it'll still show up this way in the viewport. Just briefly, I would also like to cover the materials library. As you can see, I've set this up on a different monitor so it's easier to see. We have the defaults, 81 city blocks, the power poles and road signs. Grass only. This only affects the grass area on the property. Several different types there, even included one with dead leaves for a fall scene. Roads only, kind of obvious. The dry is the same as the default. Puddles large, medium, small, and raining and wet. You can play around with these and discover them all as you like. A few different types of sky domes, 3 different images actually, even one with winter. Tree groups, obvious. And tree singles, in case you want to change it up, there's 8 different tree zones, so if you want to make up your own sets, you can put them all as dead, which there actually is already one there that's that way. But you can mix and match however you like. Then we have the weather prop, which I'll cover in a little bit, and weather conditions or winter conditions for the property itself, and even changes the sky dome on some of them. As you can see, it fresh new snow, and this one has the mountain, snow-covered mountain sky dome image and different trees. This product also comes with the prop. It's called the Weather Away or Weather Close. Either one of these can have materials changed, which we talked about earlier. Once you load it into the scene, it's just a simple parroted plane. It's parroted to the camera, the main camera, no matter what view you're in. If you're in the main camera, this is what you'll see. Controls for move it away from you, move it toward you, just depending on the camera angle, the size of your render, all that. So this is necessary controls to have. Also, there's up, down, and left, right, and these are all perpendicular to the camera, in conjunction with the same coordinates as the camera. You can turn it vertically if you like for some whatever reason. And you can apply whatever transparent material you would like to it. You can tip it away and forward, and then also rotate it, which is nice when you use the rain materials, which I'll show you in just a second. As you can see, I switched back to a different view to allow you to see my material library. We go in and we select the weather prop. There are several materials there, and we had just discussed a little bit about what loads is a snow material. There's 5 different snows there, 8 different rains, 20 different lightnings, and they can be applied directly to that prop that we loaded into the viewport, which I'll load a rain material right now and then switch back so you can see what I'm talking about. This clockwise, counterclockwise one is nice for rain if you want a driving rain. You can also scale this prop up and down. You don't have to move it in and out to be able to cover the entire view. One side note about these materials: those main promo images that show the rain, the snow, and those types of renders were done at 2312 by 1300, some pretty high render settings, as you see here, and the snow one took almost 24 hours to render. Mainly because it's rendering through a transparency and rendering transparencies and reflections and on and on. So the higher your settings, the longer your renders will take, but the payoff is good in the long run. Some small note is when you have a light in your scene that has ambient occlusion set, and for this particular example I had it set to 15 feet, which is a lot of distance. The scene I rendered, I think I had that number of samples set to 9. So when you have that many samples times that much distance, that really adds up quickly. If I wouldn't have had ambient occlusion on in that scene, it would have rendered quite a bit faster. That's basically all the things with the renders. As far as the lightning prop, you can come back and grab a hold of the controls for that, move it away from you if you really want it to be in a proper location, move it up and down like somewhere in the distance. Whoops, those spinners, they just jump however they want to, don't they? Move it up to a spot where you think it might be good, and then maybe scale it up bigger for a scene that has rain in it, as well as lightning, like the storm image you see as one of the main promos. Then you just go back into the props folder, add another prop, and clockwise, counterclockwise with that rain direction, and scale it up a little bit. And there, with a combination of two props, you have a really dynamic looking image. That scene also took quite a bit of time, almost 16 hours I believe it was. So everything has its cost. But those are the weather props. Well, I would just like to say thank you in conclusion for purchasing my products, and I hope you really have a lot of hours of enjoyment, as they took me a lot of hours to create. And expect to see more and more of these products show up on the site as time goes by. And thank you for your time.